We now come to question 7 that the Deputy of St. One will ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy of St. One.
Thank you, sir. What statistical evidence relating to income inequality has led the Chief Minister to conclude that relative low income is reducing, as reported in his answer to written question 1160, tabled on the 14th of March 2017?
So I'd like to ask Senator Uche to answer this. Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, sir. As our economy improves, it is of course important that people across our society benefit. Members will have seen the written answer today listing the sources of evidence which is widely available. Income inequality reduced as our economy performed well before the financial crisis, and then deteriorated afterwards as employment income suffered and low interest rates and rents stretched out the distribution after housing costs. Our economy is now improving, with unemployment at a 6-year low and earnings rising above inflation for the last 4 years. As reported yesterday, our income tax system is also more progressive, and we are considering the distributional impact of spending decisions. We need to continue with these improvements.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes.
The Assistant Minister's answer supports his view of a more positive outlook, and many of the surveys he's mentioned in that answer and the written answer talk about essentially how people are feeling. But does he acknowledge that the employment, inflation, and other surveys he has mentioned to justify his answer do not provide the firm statistical evidence that the numbers of people in low income are reducing from the levels seen in the last income distribution survey?
Certainly, it's recognised that there is more work to be done with regard to the analysis of the information which is available. I would be very pleased to make sure more work is done to ensure that we can get a clearer picture of that particular issue. I think we all in this Assembly want to ensure that the income distribution is better than what it currently is, and we're going to work towards achieving that.
Deputy Mezek.
Sir, not a single thing said in the answer from the Assistant Minister actually contributes tangible evidence that income inequality is going down in Jersey. His government, in their MTFP, supported policies to cut the support to pensioners and single-parent families. The income distribution survey showed that a third of pensioners live in relative low income and 54% of single-parent families live in relative low income. What assessment has been done to see the effect of those two cuts to those two groups that already live in large amounts of relative low income? What assessment has been done to see the effects of those cuts on those people? And if none has been done, how can he possibly make the statement that relative low income is reducing in the island?
So looking at reports which look at historic situation that situate what has been going on obviously in the past is always a difficult thing to do when we're looking at things which have been carried out more recently. Some of the decisions that the Deputy has just spoken about are more recent decisions of this Assembly, which will no doubt be part of the work which the Statistics Unit and the Social Policy Unit will look at going forward. But as I say, we have gone through, what members will hopefully recognise is that we went through a very difficult time a few years ago with the recession, and we are now getting back to trying to improve the situation. So with the work to be done, there's no denying the work. We need to improve matters, and we will be doing our best to achieve that.
Well, supplementary, sir, I'm glad that the Assistant Minister has made the point he's made at the end there, and in his initial answer he referenced economic growth. Now, ignoring the fact that there is actually no trend in economic growth in Jersey, and actually it's fluctuating in each different year, what evidence does he have that what economic growth we have had in Jersey has actually benefited people at the bottom of the income scale, because the last time I saw figures, actually 50% of the jobs that are being created are 0 hours contracts, jobs which cause instabilities in people's lives and usually come alongside low pay as well. What evidence does he have that the economic growth we have had has actually benefited those people, or is it just another statement like the one he's initially made that actually has no real meaning behind it?
Sir, there's a lot of evidence out there which is being collated by our department. It's very difficult to pick out single items of information from each of those pieces of work which can make the whole picture. I find that the reason I'm struggling with answering those specific questions about particular percentages is because the opening question was about what was the range of published the statistics which are available. What are we looking at? I've provided that answer. If we want to go into more depth about what all those surveys and all that information is, we need to do more work. And quite happy to sit down with members and with our officers to actually go through that information.
Deputy Sutherland?
Yes, sir. Has the Assistant Minister actually performed a fresh income distribution survey so that he can justify making the statement that relative low income is reducing? And if he hasn't, because that's the only way to measure relative low income, will he withdraw the statement that relative low income is reducing?
Senator.
Sir, the next income distribution survey is in a pattern of surveys which is being carried out, and that will happen by the statistics unit in the normal way. The answers to the question which have been based on, as I said earlier, it's on historic information, and we need to do when we are sort of making decisions in the Assembly, we can only work on the hard information we have, as I say, the next distribution survey will be in a couple of years' time, and we will have to work from that.
Supplementary, if I may, sir. Does the Assistant Minister accept that those on relative low incomes are likely to be in the income support system, and that the income support components have been frozen since 2009, and therefore, for example, a single person on his own on income support is £15 a week worse off than he was in 2009? Does he not admit that rather than decreasing the relative low income, actually it's increasing via the freezing of income support components?
So I think the Deputy and I have had many years of discussing income support and the mechanisms of how it works. And income support is there to support people who are in work. And we are finding that more people are now in work than in recent times. And so talking about a reduction in income support is not the whole picture, because people are being able to get work. And we found that over the last 4 years, the earnings have been increasing by above RPI, and that is hard evidence. So there are more people in work.
That is not hard evidence.
They are earning more money.
Low income.
They are earning more money, and that is what we need to encourage.
I have.
The Minister is misleading the House.
Well,
accidentally, perhaps, but he's misleading the House
by
pretending that he has statistics which suggest that relative low income is reducing. He is misleading the House.
If the President is speaking, other members should not speak and should sit down, please. You have made your point. There is nothing that can be done about that allegation at this stage. The Senator has given his answer. I was to say that I have notification from Deputies Higgins, Tadier, Lewis, Mezek that they wish to ask questions in connection with this matter. I will allow those questions, plus the supplementary, of course, for the Deputy of St. Juan. But I can't take any more names wishing to ask at this point. Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir, and I agree as well. The answers given by the Minister are basically without evidence. He has not done any research. Will the Minister accept that the income earnings growth is highly localised, largely in the financial sector, and is not permeated down into the other sectors, and together with the fact that many of the people we have employed in the island are on zero-hour contracts at minimum wage, there is very little chance of any growth in income equality from that source.
The Deputy's perspective of the way the economy is working is leaves a little bit to be desired, I'm afraid, because certainly earnings have been increasing above RPI, and there has been increase in employment across all of the sectors. We need to ensure the number of people in work now is greater now than it has been.
Very well. Deputy Tadia?
Thank you, sir. If relative low income is indeed reducing, we would be grateful to see the evidence and for that to be circulated. Sir, I think the Assistant Minister made a statement which I don't think is true. We all want to see income inequality get better. That's certainly true for me and my colleagues, and I'm sure for many members of this Assembly, but it cannot be true for the Council of Ministers, who pursue a policy of actually giving tax breaks to the rich. The Assistant Minister himself, who has been a member of multiple forms of manifestations of government in recent
Deputy, there
years.
does have to be a question, I'm afraid, and there are other members waiting.
Yes,
to ask as well.
does the Assistant Minister accept that actually the Council of Ministers doesn't want to see income equality get better because they have policies that give the rich a tax break on their long-term care, which is capped? They have a 1% tax rate for some people in the island. The most obscenely wealthy in the island pay 1% tax, if at all, on their worldwide income, whilst every other citizen in the island has to pay 20 or 27% on their disposable income.
So we know that the philosophical difference between the Reform Party and the majority of other people in this Assembly is quite stark. The income inequality issue, if members seem to be forgetting that the exemptions in the income tax thresholds have been increased over recent years. The food costs bonus for GST is there. There's lots of mechanisms which are protecting people who are at the lower end and of income. And not forgetting that we have also invested about £7 million in getting people into work. We're supporting people to get into work, and we're ensuring that they are able to support themselves, which has got to be better for the whole community, not only for the community, but for them as well.
So my supplementary, if the Minister genuinely thinks, and it's the policy of the Council of Ministers, that they want to see income inequality get better, what tangible steps will they take to close the gap? And that is to say, if we want to see better income inequality, it means closing the gap between the lowest earners and the highest earners in our society. Does he believe that we should be closing that gap, and how will he do it?
I do believe that. That is something we should try and achieve, and that is a matter. You will have seen the work which is published by the Treasury Minister about all the tax information. I think if members spend a bit of time reading that document, they will find it very, very good piece of work. It shows that with the exemption thresholds which have been increased over recent years, we are supporting people at lower income. And the piece of work which we're going forward with will come from that very useful information. And with regard to specific matters which he's asking that we might put in place, the work has to be done to do it on a formed basis.
Deputy Meze?
Sir, the Assistant Minister has had ample opportunity in both written questions and these oral questions today to provide us with the statistical evidence to back up the claim that relative low income is reducing. He hasn't been able to do so and has instead given us the most flimsy assumptions, every single one of which can be rebuffed simply by pointing out RPI, freezing income support components and reducing the disregard for other income support components too. So therefore, would the Assistant Minister like to take the opportunity to stand up and apologise for saying something that just is not true? Would he like to restore a little bit of faith in politics out there by standing up and telling States members the truth, which is that they have no evidence that income inequality is reducing in Jersey, and they have all the evidence that their policies are actually making things much worse for the poorest people in our society?
I don't like playing ping-pong with comments across the Assembly because it's not an appropriate thing to be doing. We're not a sixth form debating society. We are here to make decisions for our community. And if at any time members are misleading our community, it may be we need to look closer at ourselves sometimes. Some members might be saying things which are perhaps inappropriate. The information that we have is available to our community through the various reports and surveys which are carried out are there, open and available. And we will continue to make decisions which are for the best of our community. And I'm not going to make any apology to anybody because we have carried out the work diligently and ensure we will do our best to ensure that we can protect those who are on lower incomes.
Final supplementary, Deputy St Wong.
Surely, sir, the government should not seek to put a gloss on statistical information provided by an independent statistics unit. And given the Assistant Minister's acknowledgement this morning that he was in difficulty picking out specific items to give the whole picture, I give him an opportunity once again to withdraw the categorical statement that relative low income is reducing, when the only reliable statistical evidence we have is entirely to the contrary.
So that statement was made in answer to a written question a few weeks ago, which the Chief Minister made. And I obviously, using words in answers can be sometimes a tricky thing to do. The general principle of what was said was that things are improving. As far as withdrawing that comment, I don't think I'm in a position to do that because that was a comment that was made in truth and honesty and on the time at that stage. But all I would say as of today is that we will do our utmost to ensure that there are, picking on one specific piece of information from a report is a difficult thing to do, and the Deputy is quite right. We need to get all the information together into one place and come to a view. And that is what we will attempt to do in the future. And if there has been any sort of misunderstanding on the way the wording of the answer is, it can only be an apology for that. But certainly the intention is to reinforce the fact that our economy is doing well, there's more people in work, and we're ensuring that we will do our best to protect those on low incomes, and we will continue to do that.
Very well.
Sir, if I may, sir, the Assistant Minister is misleading the House.
Well,
it may well be that he does not understand how relative low income is defined.
An accusation of misleading the House can't be made really in this context. That may be your view. It may be that you have to deal with it outside the Assembly or bring a proposition or something of that nature. But this is a question time. The question's been asked, it's been answered, and this was the final supplementary. There's no room for asking further supplementary clarifications or questions as a result of it. There's already been a very substantial amount of time allocated to this question, well above the norm, and I'm going to move on to the next question. We come to question 8, the Deputy Southern.
Can the Chair indicate to me, because I'm confused, how a backbencher can challenge the veracity of the statement being made by a minister then, if it's not appropriate?
Well, firstly, when there's opportunity available, by asking supplementary questions challenging it. Secondly, by bringing a proposition reciting the facts and circumstances where the Deputy believes or a backbencher believes that there has been a misleading of the Assembly, and dealing with it through the course of a proposition. But Deputy, I must move on to the next question, and I'm going to do the question 8.
To the Chair,
sir. You will.
To the Chair, sir, are you recommending I take the paths we have, which is a motion of censure or a motion of no confidence in the Chief Minister?
No.